Welcome, I'm Joshua with Lisle, the designer maker. Now in a previous episode we criticised some products that Vevor had produced, but not everything from Vevor is that bad, you know. The induction forge, the hydraulic punch, they work fantastic and really good value for money as well. Still, the products that have been rejecting, we have discussion. I list a whole load of things of why it's wrong, they listen, they pass that to their manufacturers, and then they decide whether they're going to restock those items or not. So we're still speaking to each other, and even so, Vevor actually turned around and said, Josh, it's getting a bit chilly now. Do you fancy trying out one of our new heaters? And apparently this thing is far cheaper to run than electricity, and there also might be alternative fuels that we can try. Let's open the box and see what's inside. Right, got me brew, let's have a look. Alrighty, so in this kit, and there will be a link in the description, you get this. So you get the main heater itself, which is an 8 kilowatt apparently. Some ducting, which I'm guessing they want you to use to go on the outlet here. This, I believe, is your air inlet pipe. That'll attach somewhere. We've got a little filter as well, so you're not getting any dust in there. You've got an exhaust pipe. Now this is what's special about these. Space heaters that I'm used to, they just kind of burn and blow carbon dioxide all around your workshop. You're meant to have it slightly open, which defeats the point of a heater in my point. So this is different, as in it's going to exhaust its gases outside, but only keeping the heat inside with a heat exchanger. So that's interesting. And obviously you've got the rest of your fixings and stuff here. Now, also interestingly, the little handbook that they give you has quite a list on all the different parts and servicing, how to install it, and amazingly, you get a remote with it as well. Real fancy. But before we install it, let's actually have a look inside this and see if there's anything worrying about it. So, a good start. It's got nice little clips rather than a load of little screws to undo. So the idea, I think, behind this is that everything is fully serviceable, which I like very much. So the cover is structural. Right, so because you can exhaust the gases from this, which means that you theoretically can use this in confined spaces, so they've made it 12 volt operational, meaning you can have it in your tiny home or car. And in here, I believe, is a fuse, right? So you've got a 20 amp car fuse in that for your 12 volt input. Now this is the tank here, which is not fixed at all. Neither is that, apparently. This is obviously your fuel pump, so it's pumping straight from the fuel tank into the burner, which is this device here. What you'll notice, if you go on Vevor, they actually sell these individually, which connects straight to the fuel line of your vehicle. So I like that. Everything so far is detachable. Unclip this as well. I'm not going to get that the wrong way around, which is helpful. Oh, that does come off. Alright, so there's a metal clip here holding the fuel line on. I'm just going to take that off. Got a kink in that as well. I might have to do something about that. Right, one of these is air input and the other one is exhaust. I would assume this is the air input because that's closest to the fuel line, and that must be exhaust. Let's speed this along. Right, so I'm most curious about what's in here. Right, would you look at that? Right, so fuel's coming in here. It's getting ignited here. Let's have a look at what that looks like. So that's your ignition here, which looks like a little glow plug of some sort, looking at that little coil on the end of it. That is something that can be replaced, but I would have to make a special tool to get that out. Yeah, unless there is a special socket for glow plugs, I don't know. So this looks like die-cast aluminium, which it all looks in fairly good nick. Now this is a centrifugal fan, so this is actually sucking air in, blowing it out. It's going around all these parts, which is good that the heat is going away from all the electronics board that are here, coming out around here and out. Now the plastic, interestingly, does have some little what could be heat resistant spacing here. There's nothing on the plastic to say exactly what this plastic is, but you would assume it's a thermal setting plastic, as in it won't melt when it gets hot, because this thing produces 8 kilowatts. Now, so far I've not seen much to worry about, other than this bracket here, where the fuel lines go through. There is an awful burr on that, so if there was any kind of vibration, that would definitely cut through your fuel line eventually. But I'm going to get my burr cutter and just take off that burr. Right, so that is much better. But to go belt and braces, what I've got is some sticky back foam that I've recycled from another project. So I am just going to line all around that with something protective. You could obviously use some electrical tape if you felt like doing the same. Diesel alone, which is what you're meant to be using on this, won't combust without being atomized first. So it's not really, say, a risk, more of an annoyance if you do spring a leak. There we are. Right, let's put it back together. Alright, so for the record, this tin box is tin. It's very, very thin. So this is £120, but you can get these for around about £80, £90 just for the burner itself. What you're paying for is the fuel tank and this tin box for an extra £30. So something to consider. But I think I would actually be tempted to get the cheaper models that don't have all of this around. You know, I could easily make some brackets for this and just mount it to the wall and have the fuel tank separate and everything I can see and watch and make sure is behaving properly. But it looks quite neat like this, and it will serve its purpose, I'm sure. Right, so if there are any electricians out there, you tell me if I'm doing this right. But first thing I'm going to do is put some ferrules on these connections here. There we are. So far so good. Right, so what I have here is a 12 volt power supply. The machine itself takes 40 watts of power. This is rated at 60 watts of power, and I've put ferrules on the end of this as well. So for ease of maintenance, I decided to connect these two together using a 12 volt connector like this one. Now this is rated to 80 watts. So this draws 40, this produces 60, and that's 80 watts. So hopefully nothing will burn down. Right, so I think the receiving end should be female. I don't know. It sounds so wrong. So I'll probably cover over that with some shrink wrap, you know. Don't want to zap myself if I'm trying to pull this thing apart. Right, so I've rigged up the air intake like this, which is what I assume they want us to do. And they've given me a couple of self-tapping screws here. Everything looks like it corresponds to those two holes there. The only problem is you've got the fuel line directly behind here. Fortunately, they've given you these other big holes, so I can actually see where the fuel line is and we'll just miss it. But I'm half thinking I might just get rid of this. I don't think it's entirely necessary. I mean, let's just have a little look at what's actually in this filter. Right, so inside the filter, all we've got is a plastic mesh. So it's not going to get rid of all the real fine stuff. I think I'm just going to not bother with this. I think it'll be fine without it. Yeah, I may even cut myself a piece of stainless steel mesh and just put that directly over the inlet. I think that'd be more practical rather than having all of this in the way. So I'm going to take this off actually. Okay, so the next logical step I think is to mount this to my wall. Now I did think to have it on the floor down there. But actually, you want to have a bit of space underneath so you can do a bit of maintenance. You also don't want it too high, otherwise you won't be able to fill the thing with fuel very easily. So for me, I'm going to bring it just up to this height here, so I need to make some brackets.
There we go.
Alright, we're finally ready to use this thing. Now, I had a little issue, so I trawled on the internet web to figure out some answers. And I did not realise how popular these things are. I mean, there are videos upon videos reaching hundreds of thousands of views each. So people obviously are loving these things. I mean, I'm a complete virgin. If you're new to these like me, you're probably thinking, it can't be that good. But apparently they are. Yeah, so what I've done for you guys is I've selected some of my favourite videos that I found that were most helpful, with lots of more in-depth information, especially things on like using the controller and how to install that properly. That will all be in the description below. Right, so in the myriad of information that is out there, I think I'm just going to go down to the bare knuckles of how efficient is this to run? And what about those alternative fuels, you say? Well, to start with, I've got some red diesel. I've got exactly 1 litre there. What we're going to do is we're going to fill it up. We're going to put it on its highest setting, 5.5 hertz. Before I pour this in, I need to make a little funnel though. I've got myself a tonic bottle. Right then, exactly 1 litre. Right, so what you see here is what is referred to as the blue controller. There's different types of controllers with different machines. They're all pretty much the same, but all of them have fancy button work that you need to do. So the first thing that we need to do is to purge the line with fuel. And to do that, apparently, we press this button here and this button here at the same time. So H off. So if we turn that to on, and you can hear a little click, that's now purging the fuel line. To turn it off, we'll press this button here. But I'm going to keep doing it until I can see it going into the engine itself. Right, to get some of the air out, what I've actually done is I've disconnected it at the bottom. I'm just going to let it drain into a cup for the moment. There we go. So I drained a little bit out the bottom just to get all the air bubbles out. And I've reconnected it and I'll pour this back into the tank. So if we press and hold this button, you get HFA. And then if you press these 2 buttons together on the remote, it will connect until you get this screen here. So if you're struggling to connect, that's what you have to do. Press and hold this one and then press those 2. So now that we are connected, we should be able to just turn it on. If I press up, it's giving me the 5 hertz. We should be able to go to 5.5. You can see it changing on there actually. There we go, 5.5 hertz. That's the pumping speed. If we press this one, press and hold, it's on. We've got some indication here that the fan is on. We've got air intake, exhaust, the glow plug, and the heat sensor. Everything is working fine so far. So it takes a little bit of time for the glow plug to get to temperature before it starts pumping fuel through. There we go. There we go. And welcome to my other shiny new product that I've yet to review yet. More on this bad boy in a bit. But look, it's actually saying it's drawing 146 watts. I saw it there at one point. Oh, we're on a jet engine now. Look at it. Hear it firing up. Well, we're cooking now. Yeah, so this is now connected to the 12 volt port on the back of the EcoFlow. So proof of concept, if you want one of these for your tiny house or you know, your off-grid site, it'll work fine. But for the electricians that were possibly screaming at me already, these are no good. This won't do it. Right, so as you can see, our little man on the workshop heater is very unhappy. I'm going to time this whole operation. We'll see how long it takes to get to 20 degrees Celsius. But more importantly, I'm interested in the fuel consumption. So I'll check back with you guys once we've run out of fuel. Right, in the meantime, I have another interesting piece of kit. This thermal imaging camera. So I was going to save this for another burner making video where I was going to show you guys how to make a really efficient wood burner, but it seems very apt that I bring it to here as well. So I can show you now all the areas that are getting hot, so especially that exhaust. which peaked at about 240 degrees Celsius. So I'm also curious that my little plate there, it doesn't get too hot. I might have to put some vent holes on it just so it's got some air circulation. But we can also keep a good eye on the burner itself and see if there's anywhere where it's getting excess heat. Right, this thing's been on for like 10 minutes now, and I can honestly say I'm toasty already. My workshop is 6 meters by 3 meters by about 2.5 meters tall. And from what I gathered on the internet, it only needs about 2 kilowatts max for a burner to be installed to make a sufficient heat. So here's another thing you want to make note of. Look at that! So that's firing heat straight at my trestles there. They've already gone up to 50 degrees C. I'm gonna have to move those out of the way. Alright, so according to the EcoFlow, we are running at about 40 watts periodically, but the initial setup needs like over 150 watts. So I've definitely got to rethink the power supply if I want to connect this into the mains. I'll tell you what, this is interesting though, because I can see the hot points on the EcoFlow. You can see there, we're reaching like 30 degrees C. But also the actual wires themselves, you can see where they're heating up. That connection there, that's gone up to at least 35 degrees Celsius. And obviously where the join is there, you can see that's heated up. That went up to 20 degrees C. And just for fun, I did put the ducting on the end of there. That way I can pump the air directly underneath the table. Yeah, look at that, 86. Got an underneath shot here, but I thought I'd show you some of this. See there, we're getting up to well past 200 degrees. But my little panel's doing all right. So that's about 50 degrees there, according to this. But I'll be watching that very, very carefully. All right, we're closely approaching 1 hour now. Our little man is very happy, and we're climbing up to 20 degrees C. Bear in mind this is at the high point furthest away from the burner, so I'll show you the shutdown sequence. So what I was going to do is to use a full litre of fuel, but if we do that I'm going to die in here because it's actually feeling really warm. So instead we'll drain out all the remaining fuel and measure how much we've got left, and then we'll be able to work out how much it's used in an hour. Interestingly as well, the dial says it's 33 degrees on its ambient temp. That's not going to be relative to the room, so there's no point, I think, setting the machine to the temperature. It's more that you want to set your machine to a certain flow rate, dial that in how you like it, and then turn it off when necessary. Right, we're ready now. So if I press and hold this button here, turning off. Now the thing you'll want to know is it will keep the fan going until it's fully cooled down. It has a cooling down sequence. There we go, don't need to shout as much now. Right, so initially I was just going to empty the remnants using just the pump, but that was apparent that was going to just take forever. So instead we're going to take it manually apart. Well, we've used a bit, that's for sure. Alrighty, I've sat down and figured out the maths for you. And trust me, it's boiling in here. I've had to take the hat off and everything, so the ball patch is in full view. Right, so we've used 350 millilitres. And we've used red diesel, and the current price for that is £1.30 per litre. So if we take £1.30 and divide that by 1,000 millilitres, and then times that by 350 millilitres, that's what we used within an hour, we get 45 pence. Now if we divide that by the 8 kilowatt output that this has got, then we get 5 pence per kilowatt hour. And just to put that into perspective, the current electrical prices is 35 pence per kilowatt. So this is 7 times cheaper to run, I believe, compared to electricity. That's amazing. Now we also had it on full wax of 5.5 hertz. If we divide that by the 1.7 hertz, which is what the lowest setting this will run at, you get 3.2. So at 45 pence per hour divided by 3.2, that's 14p an hour. And not only that, you don't have to have it on all day either. You could have it on just for an hour. And if that knocks the frost out the air, then that's all worth it, I think. You know, and it seriously worries me the amount of people who've got electrical blow heaters and how much juice they're using and how much they're charging. It's absolutely ridiculous. Which leads me to another ridiculous point, and that is the alternative fuels. Right, so red diesel is the legit fuel of choice. However, I was very interested to know that you can burn waste oil on these things, which obviously you can obtain for free from your local garage. However, in England at least, the legislation has changed, so it's now a criminal offence if you burn waste oil in one of these. And you're probably thinking, well, that's because of environmental law and all of that kind of stuff, so they don't want you burning waste oil. It's not very good for the environment. Well, when the garages pay someone to take it away, guess what they do with it? They burn it. So the only reason they don't want you to be burning it in your workshop is because they're not earning any tax money. Now, you can actually get permission to burn waste oil, but it's going to cost you about £3,500, and then you have to renew that every year for £1,500. But it really has made me think of all those poor souls who are in their houses who can't afford the heating and who are freezing. Now, I'm in a very fortunate position. Although we couldn't afford to buy fuel for our house this year, it was going to cost well over £1,000 to fill up our tank because we run off oil. But fortunately for me, we have wood burners and I have an ample supply of wood, so we're fine. But with the massive fuel prices and electrical prices, people will freeze this Christmas. And although some parts of this are a little bit shoddy, that is fantastic. Now, you could theoretically burn biofuel through this, so you get some old chip fat, for example, from a local fish and chippy. However, the energy content of chip fat isn't as good as diesel, and waste oil is even better. And to get a working machine that is like 85 quid, 90 quid is phenomenal. That you could heat your entire home with one of these. But the problem is one of these could be potentially very dangerous if you don't know how to install one properly. Now, you may argue that we're using waste oil, vegetable fats, that is going to coke up the inside of these things and going to render them useless. Now, I've put some videos in the description below. Some guys have been using all kinds of stuff. One in particular, for 3 years running, it coked out. So they were able to take it apart and completely clean the inside of it, and it was working fine again. So these are obviously tried and tested as people, loads of people using these, and I was absolutely blown away. So now I've finally joined the club. Right, believe it or not, we are experiencing right now a power outage. And it's at this moment I realise how fortunate I am to have one of these. The most ironic part about this is I've just received the new transformer to turn the 240 volt into 12 volt electricity. This is 300 watts, so more than enough power to power this thing. But what I specifically have planned for this, which is different to anyone else you might have seen, is that I plan on making a steam turbine generator to recharge the thing, so I can actually use my wood stove to generate electricity. At least that's the idea. We'll see how I get on. Anyway, let me know if there's anything else that you would like to see me review, because I'll do a follow-up on this, definitely. And so if you want to see more, please do subscribe. It makes a massive difference to the progress of this channel. And if you want to see some other videos, why not click on this video here? It's got some really interesting stuff. In the meantime, why don't you guys get out there and forge for yourselves a life worth living? And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.